Welcome back, everybody, to a hot and steamy night out here on the dock. My name's Mike for the new folks out there. I know we get a lot of new folks with these videos, and we are once again talking about the President Trump assassination attempt. And as of when I'm recording this, it is the 27th of August, meaning that we've had 6 weeks pass, and we still have a ton of unknowns and misreporting, whether deliberate or not, on what happened on that day, on the 13th. And we're basically going to walk through some of the things that have come out in the past week. And we're going to go through them in chronological order, roughly. So the first big one that came out was the Klay Higgins report. Basically, Klay Higgins is a congressman. He has a law enforcement background. He went to the Butler Farm grounds and conducted his own investigation, talked with a lot of the local law enforcement on site, and gained a lot of new perspectives and new information that we didn't have prior to that. Again, all of this has been reported on my Twitter page, but there's a lot of things in this report that really are new for the first time, have been reported, and there's a lot more that came out, some of it even yesterday as of when I'm recording this. So we're just going to kind of walk through some of the bullet points here and just go through it and then get on to other things beyond this report. The first thing that stood out to me in this report is that, according to the representative here, he says, according to my investigation, the United States Secret Service had never prior to J13 assigned a counter-sniper team to a former president, including President Trump. And what is also important about that he doesn't mention here in this report, is that was the first time a rally had been live streamed on many networks, to include CNN. So it just so happens that the first time there is several counter-sniper teams from the Secret Service assigned to a former presidential rally also is the time that it is live streamed on CNN and many other outlets. It's just interesting, something to kind of stow away in the back of the brain and consider as we move forward. The representative here goes into the communications plan. You guys can see that here on your screen, but what stood out to me is the fact that the United States Secret Service, according to this report, did not retrieve the radios that had been set aside for them by the Butler County Tactical Command. According to his report, there were 2 specific radios that were assigned to be picked up by the Secret Service, so that way you could have interoperable comms between the multiple law enforcement agencies on site. And apparently on the 12th, the Butler County ESU commander personally reminded the Secret Service counter-sniper teams to pick up the assigned radios at the command post RV, but it did not happen. In my last video on this topic, I mentioned that we only had body cams from one of the law enforcement agencies that was on site, and that there were at least 4 or 5 that we know of. And basically, the congressman here also states that radio traffic transmitted through the county radio tower 911 center is recorded. Chairman Kelly and I have a timeline of the transcripts of all local radio traffic provided by the ESU commander, Lenz. That has not been published yet. However, that will fill in a lot of the gaps that we see with the body cam footage that was released without audio. So presumably, all of that body cam footage, we will be able to time it up with the audio that has been recorded via this tower. Again, as of when I'm making this, that has not been released, but expect that to be coming out in the coming weeks or days. Next, the congressman goes on to say that 8 shots were fired by Crooks from his firing and dying position on the AGR rooftop, building number 6. According to the AGR diagram, the position provided excellent concealment for Crooks from the northern counter-sniper team due to the foliage branches of 2 separate trees. Crooks' firing position did not offer concealment from the southern counter-sniper team. However, it could be noted that the would-be assassin perfectly positioned himself to minimize the threat of counterfire from the ground or from United States Secret Service counter-sniper teams. Crooks' firing position was also several feet back from the actual peak of the AGR rooftop. By choosing that position, Crooks effectively minimized the skyline profile of his head and upper body. That absolutely is true. I've covered that in previous reports. Now, again, that's only true based on what we know and what the congressman here has said, based on where his body was found, those sorts of things. All of that has not been conclusively proven, but we pretty well know that to be true at this point, and I'm going to go with that as being a true statement. And before we move on with this report, one thing I want to mention outside of this report that has come out is that several other videos have been released since the last video I made on the topic, and one of them does show Crooks appear to sit up after the 9th shot was fired, but prior to the 10th shot being fired. What that indicates, at least to me, is that very likely that Secret Service team that was in the south position had a pretty good shot on him as he raised his profile above where it was in his firing position. So that's just an interesting thing to note. Now, getting back to the report, all 8 casings were recovered and are allegedly, which is a great word, and I agree with that, allegedly in proper possession of the FBI. Thomas Matthew Crooks' rifle is also allegedly in the possession of the FBI. I will need to examine all of the physical evidence that has been harvested by law enforcement and is in possession of the FBI. all of it. And continuing on, the ninth shot fired on J 13th was fired from a Butler SWAT operator from the ground, approximately 100 yards away from the AGR building. Shot 9 hit Crooks' rifle stock and fragged his face, neck, right shoulder area from the stock breaking up. Now, one thing I want to point out on this as well, again, a lot of videos have come out since my last video, and one of them does appear to show a actual SWAT operator in the position that the representative here is describing, taking a shot and then raising his fist in the air, assuming that he actually shot the shooter. However, as the congressman goes on, the SWAT operator who took the shot was a total badass. Essentially, that when he took the shot, Crooks was mostly obscured by foliage on the AGR rooftop, and he immediately left his assigned post, ran towards the threat, running to a clear shot position directly in the line of fire while Crooks was firing 8 rounds. Again, as we just discussed, there is video of that. And then after he took his shot, which was from the standing position, which makes sense given the actual angle of the shot, he does raise his fist in the air. The congressman continues, he stopped Crooks, and importantly, I believe the shot damaged the buffer tube on Crooks' AR. I won't be certain of this until I can examine Crooks' rifle, but I'm 99% sure based on reliable eyewitness ESU tactical officers who observed Crooks' rifle before the FBI harvested it as evidence. This means that if the AR buffer tube was damaged, Crooks' rifle wouldn't fire after his 8th shot. So again, that's a big assumption, and as we have shown in previous videos, multiple law enforcement officers on the scene can be seen on body camera footage, taking out their cell phones and taking close-up images of the rifle. As we have described, more likely than not, it was a Holosun red dot optic on there with some offset iron sights. However, I haven't seen any clean shots of the buffer tube, and apparently neither has the congressman. That said, for the actual buffer tube to be impeded, that's quite possible. However, for it to happen and also have fragged a stock, I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying it's, in my opinion anyway, it's unlikely because where it would have to be impeded would have to be essentially towards the front. And then if he was firing from a prone position, one would assume the stock would be more towards the rear. According to multiple reports, Thomas Crooks was 6'4". So 6'4" people firing from the prone tend to extend their stocks all the way out. And you can definitely get short stroke functioning of an AR-15 if the damage was towards the rear of the buffer tube just by running the charging handle, if that makes sense. I understand that's kind of getting in the weeds, but just kind of throwing that out there, that assumption that the congressman is making here is not impossible. I'm just not saying that it is likely either, based on what we know at this point. He continues on, Crooks went down from his firing position when shot 9 was fired and the SWAT officer was certain of his hit. Again, I agree with that, based on him pumping his fist in the air. And then it says, Crooks recovered after just a few seconds and popped back up. Again, we have video footage of that now of him sitting up right after the nice shot. The next point the congressman makes here is a little bit strange in my opinion because again, we are 6 weeks after this and he states the 10th and I believe final shot was fired from the Southern Counter Sniper team. I will not be 100% certain of this until further investigation. So I say it's strange because again, it's 6 weeks after this and we still don't know it. I haven't seen any footage of that Southern Counter Sniper team actually taking the shot. As we rolled in with last week's video, we have them just talking to an officer on scene. You can see their equipment, all of those sorts of things. However, I've still not seen any footage with all the videos that were rolling at the time, especially after the shooting and people who were taking video. I have not seen any footage of them taking that shot, which is very interesting because a lot of cameras were focused in that area with President Trump being right in front of it, and I still haven't seen it. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm not saying they didn't do it. I'm just saying it is strange. And additionally, the Secret Service counter snipers have not been interviewed by the congressman at this point, which is, again, also strange. He continues on, however, I am quite sure that the U.S. Secret Service Southern Counter Sniper team fired the killing shot, which, according to my investigation, entered somewhere around the left mouth area and exited around the right ear area. So that's interesting. In previous videos, we have discussed here on the channel that based on the wounds that I saw on the images, which of course we can't show on YouTube, of his actual head, it didn't seem like it was the damage, or rather the damage had come from a 300 Win Mag cartridge. However, it's entirely possible that if it didn't hit any type of skeletal structure, any type of bone structure, that the fragmentation and the explosive force that we would expect to see from a 300 Win Mag headshot didn't happen. That is entirely possible. So if it just went through flesh, it's possible, based on the images I've seen, that it was, in fact, a 300 Win Mag. Again, ballistics are funny, you know, 1 inch to the left, 1 inch to the right, and things look very different. But according to this report, that does seem plausible, in my opinion. The next point the congressman makes, we already know, but he makes an interesting point on it. He says the FBI released the crime scene after just 3 days, much to everyone's surprise. He said the FBI doesn't exist in a vacuum, and by doing so, by releasing the crime scene, by washing everything down, they had to know that that was going to, I guess, raise scrutiny by future congressional investigations, yet they did it anyway. So that is interesting. It tells you something about how the supervisors at the FBI think of their oversight. The last point that we're going to talk about in this investigation really is kind of the biggest one, in my opinion, and the most important or the most eyebrow-raising of the bunch. Again, I will leave a link to it down below in the video description if you guys want to read the whole thing. It's not all that long, and there's a lot of other good nuggets that we're not covering here for time's sake in there. But he says that his effort to examine Crook's body on Monday, August 5th, caused quite a stir and revealed a disturbing fact. The FBI released the body for cremation 10 days after J13. On J23, Crooks was gone. Nobody knew this until Monday, August 5th, including the county coroner, law enforcement, sheriff, etc. Yes, the Butler County coroner technically had legal authority over the body, but I spoke with the coroner, and he would never have released Crook's body to the family for cremation or burial without specific permission from the FBI. He also goes on to mention what I mentioned in my last video, is that the autopsy report is late. That is true. They tried to release a one-page autopsy report, essentially claiming that his cause of death was a gunshot wound, which obviously we all know that based on what we've seen in different videos. However, that is not the type of autopsy that is done on someone as high profile as a person who tried to assassinate the former president of the United States. What was in his blood, what medications he was on, all of those things should be released in a proper autopsy. And as the congressman here states, it is late. Whether or not we will ever see that, whether or not it was done properly, at this point, we simply don't know. The next point that we found out since my last video is that initially it was reported that the shooter had multiple encrypted bank accounts overseas, and what has come out since is that that's not the case. What he had was multiple encrypted messaging apps that were based overseas. So the actual news report says Donald Trump rally gunman Thomas Crooks used encrypted messaging accounts on various platforms located in Belgium, New Zealand, and Germany, according to a member of the Congressional Task Force investigating his assassination attempt against the former president. So again, that is one of those things that by itself isn't that crazy. However, when combined with everything else that we've learned about this guy, a lone wolf, if you will, who's 20 years old, doesn't have military experience, all of those sorts of things, having these types of encrypted apps on his phone seems a little bit strange. And whether or not we will get the communications from those apps, we will see. The next piece of information has been released relatively recently, and it says the father of Trump shooter Thomas Matthew Crooks hires powerhouse criminal lawyer as FBI intensifies investigation into his role in son's assassination attempt. If you actually read the article, it goes into saying that essentially the father was a known, fan of firearms and had sold firearms to multiple members of the family. And then it goes on to state that he has hired Quinn Logue, a Pittsburgh-based law firm that him and his wife have retained. And they describe themselves, the law firm does, as trial attorneys who specialize in both criminal defense and civil suits, including wrongful death and personal injury. So if you guys remember back to one of the earlier videos I did, both of his parents are counselors. And so how do they have the money to hire this, powerhouse law firm? Who's paying for that? I don't know, but it is something to consider. And in another piece of information that came out of yesterday's congressional testimony, which was attended by 5 different congressmen who are on the committee doing the research into this actual assassination attempt. One of those members is Eli Crane, who is a former Navy SEAL, might know a thing or two about explosives. And what he stated was, based on the photos that he's seen of the actual explosive devices that were reportedly constructed by Crooks, said that they were built into ammo cans, the actual explosive devices themselves, that they were sophisticated and that they would in fact work. And they would have in fact worked with the detonator that was found on Crooks' person on the day of the shootings when he was on the roof. You guys remember, law enforcement officers pulled that transmitter out of his pocket, and Eli Crane here stated that they would have worked with that and that they were sophisticated. Again, it has been stated many times that this person, Thomas Crooks, 20 years old, had no military experience and also had no online presence. You hear that over and over again. However, that leads us to the next point. If he hadn't been in the military, he would have had to research these types of explosives, these sophisticated explosives, apparently. So how did he learn how to do that if he wasn't researching online? Did someone help him do that? Which, brings us to a whole nother rabbit hole of things to go down. But as of right now, we have been told lone wolf, lone wolf, lone wolf And that brings us to another point that has had conflicting reports since the beginning. So basically, since the couple days after the actual J13 incident happened, Crooks' vehicle was described in multiple ways. Number one, it was described as a Hyundai Sonata. Many media outlets reported it as such. However, if you guys remember on the, I believe it was the 14th and 15th, the initial reports, which were eyewitness reports, came out, and it stated that there was a white van with Arizona plates that was searched by law enforcement on the evening of the 13th. There is a gentleman who actually took a video of it, who was a local resident. He took footage of the actual law enforcement team, the bomb squad, getting into the van. And in an actual interview with Fox News, he stated that when the police opened it up, they all jumped back. So I say that to say many media outlets have described the actual explosives that Crooks had on him as similar to grenades. But if the devices were similar to grenades, I highly doubt a bomb squad would jump back. That's just not a normal reaction for a bomb squad. However, if they were what Eli Crane described them as, sophisticated devices rigged up in ammo cans, I can see that being a very plausible thing.
We walked outside and saw them opening up his vehicle and everything. When the cop opened it, everybody else jumped back and was trying to stay out of the way. Here I am worried about it blowing up or whatever's going on. So,
I mean, to find out that this happens and the former president gets shot nearly right in the head, almost assassinated across the street from your house, and then to find out that the gunman's car was possibly parked right in front of your house. How many cops are we talking about that were out there surrounding this van? And was there a license plate on the back of that van?
There was probably 5 to 10 cars out there, and there was an Arizona plate on the van.
This white van had Arizona plates. Who was the van registered to? I have heard multiple rumors online of who it is, but I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole on YouTube. But certainly you guys can feel free to do so down below in the comment section. But it certainly is interesting if that van with Arizona plates was driven there by Crooks. What does that tell us? If he actually drove a Hyundai Sonata there and not that white van, then how does that white van tie in? At this point, we simply don't know. Before we continue on, we do need to thank the main channel sponsor, and that is the folks at Brownells. They carry basically everything that we've talked about in this video, everything from firearms, ammo, optics, etc. They also have a ton of gunsmithing supplies if you guys are into that. Good folks over there at Brownells, also great prices, so definitely check them out. Now let's get back to it. We've got just a couple points to make before we close the video out, and I think we can get it done before we lose the light. So yesterday, again, in that hearing that we just referenced, a gentleman who is a counter sniper, his name is Ben Schaefer, said that the presence of a rangefinder on Crooks changes him from just a, somebody to look at into a person of interest in law enforcement parlance, and would warrant him to be stopped and questioned by law enforcement who were on the scene. As we have shown in many videos prior to this, the actual area where the AGR building was, of course, there was a fence in between that area and where President Trump was speaking. On the side of the fence where President Trump was speaking, people had to go through metal detectors and things like that. However, on the AGR side, they didn't, but there was multiple law enforcement assets on that side. There were plainclothes law enforcement, uniform law enforcement from multiple departments. There was supposedly at least 3 counter snipers as well, and no one approached Crooks while he was on the ground reportedly until after 6 p.m. when he was last seen at the picnic table in our timeline that we have discussed here as well. So he was spotted with a rangefinder at least at 5:40, and apparently, according to the timeline, he didn't leave that picnic table until at least 6:05. So there's a 25-minute period where multiple law enforcement officers, again, uniform and plainclothes, were in that area. No one approached him to ask what he was doing, asked him why he had a rangefinder, none of that. That is a big question that we still have. The additional question that we need to talk about is going to be the rifle itself. Again, I already sort of hinted at it earlier, but why have we not seen any photos of the rifle that is close up? In my opinion, it's more likely than not because of what the congressman said earlier. There's likely some very telling evidence on it. And if it was as simple as what the congressman said, I think we would have seen the photos. The fact that we haven't yet is very, very telling. And I suppose we'll just have to wait until more FOIA requests go in, more videos leak, etc., more body cam footage leaks. But again, we shouldn't have to do that in 2024 in a free and open society. All of this stuff should be out there, and it should be known, because again, it's not like this is a criminal trial where somebody is facing a murder charge, because of course a person was killed there and 2 other people were very seriously injured. Thomas Crooks is not going to be on trial. There's no evidence we have to hold unless there's other people involved, which, that certainly may be the case, but as of right now, they're telling us it isn't. So why don't we know everything? It's just, there's a lot of questions that we shouldn't have 6 weeks after this event. Definitely, if you guys have questions, let us know down below. If you guys are looking for the latest and greatest breaking news on this, make sure you're following me at all my various social media sites that you see down here at the bottom of your screen. Again, when things break, that is where they will be posted first. It takes time to do a full YouTube breakdown video like we're doing here, and I can't do them right away. So that is where they will be first. If you guys like this type of video and you're not subscribed, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Typically, we don't have such loud vehicles going by, but make sure you hit that subscribe button, because unfortunately, I don't think this is going to be the last video that we do on this topic, because there's still so many unknowns out there. So hit that subscribe button. If you've done that and you're not seeing 2 to 4 videos a week here on the channel, you are being censored by an algorithm from my content. Easy way around that is to sign up for the email at the website here on your screen. This email goes out once a month, and it has all of the videos since the previous month's email went out. So that way there's no big tech giant censoring your eyes from my content. And additionally, we have a daily deals email. If you guys like deals on rangefinders, AR-15s, ammo, optics, all the things we talked about in this video, it goes out every day. 8 of the best deals that we find on the internet goes out from me to you. Again, no algorithm, straight to your inbox. And you can sign up for that email list at the website here on your screen. It also has a good meme in there that a lot of people seem to enjoy. So if you guys like Pro 2A memes, you can sign up for that as well. We also have an SMS service, and you can sign up for that at the website here on your screen. It goes out at most once a day. It's typically the best deal that we find around the internet on that day, or it is a new video that has been released, one of the two. You guys can sign up for that as well. It's not super spammy. At most 1 SMS text per day, and that's all I have for you. Thank you all for watching. I truly appreciate it, and I look forward to seeing everybody in the next video.